Hello and good morning. My name is Dr. Sherry Quinones and I'm sitting here with my ubiquitous cup of joe morning coffee. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about psychology, sort of what we're going to be studying this summer. First of all, what is psychology? Psychology is the study of human behavior. Well, what does that come from? What does that mean? The study of human behavior is psyche and ology. Psyche is mind, ology is behavior. So originally it was a study of the mind, but it has kind of expanded, the definition has kind of changed a little bit into just, in general, the layperson's definition of psychology is the study of behavior. Mostly human behavior, but also some animal behavior. Well, what are the main ideas or theories that we're going to talk about? Sort of in the introduction, when you're looking at major things, what are the major theories to talk about? Well, the oldest and the most basic are structuralism and functionalism. Structuralism is looking at behavior in terms of its component parts. So, you have the cup of coffee, and you look at the component pieces of drinking the cup of coffee. You look at the thought to do it, you look at the hand moving towards the cup, you look at the cup moving towards the mouth, you look at the coffee going in the body and what the coffee does to the body. That is structuralism. Put it together to make the behavior. Functionalism would be looking at drinking the cup of coffee in terms of its purpose or function. So why do you do it? For instance, I may drink a cup of coffee because I want to become more alert in the morning. That's why I do it. That would be its function, its purpose. So function looks at what do people get out of it, what's the purpose. Those are the two views of behavior that were sort of original. Then you have views of behavior that are still there today. One of the views of behavior is psychoanalytic theory. When you think psychoanalytic theory, think Freud. Psychoanalytic theory mostly looks at behavior in terms of unconscious processes and sometimes childhood experiences. Let me explain. If you look at the cup of coffee and look at me drinking the cup of coffee, how would somebody from psychoanalytic theory explain that behavior? Well, they might say that my mother always drank coffee during childhood, so that I have a desire to bring back some of those childhood feelings, and that's why I drink coffee. They might say that I have an unconscious desire to be all warm and snuggly and cozy, so that's why I drink coffee. That's psychoanalytic theory. Sort of what are those unconscious desires, and with that, sometimes, what are some childhood experiences that led to those unconscious desires? That's psychoanalytic theory. Another view is Gestalt psychology. Gestalt psychology is almost the opposite of structuralism, in the sense that Gestalt psychology, the motto is, the whole is more than the sum of its parts. Gestalt psychologists originally did a lot of research on perception and looking at visual illusions and how we see things that aren't necessarily complete as complete and things like that. And again, the motto was the whole is more than the sum of its parts. They're basically saying you got to look at the whole person. You got to look at everything in order to understand the behavior. That's Gestalt. Then there's behaviorism. Behaviorism came along and said, hey Freud, hey you psychoanalysts, we really can't study unconscious processes because we don't know what people are unconsciously believing or thinking. We can't do that. What we can do is look at the environment. Behaviorism looks at what environmental influences affect behavior. So, how would they explain drinking the cup of coffee? Behaviorism. They would say that I drink the cup of coffee, I get more alert. The fact that I get more alert makes me want to drink coffee because I get a good experience, therefore I'll do it again. It's kind of like, why do you slow down in an area where you know there are policemen? Because you don't want to get a ticket. It's the environmental influences. It's you do an action like I drink a cup of coffee, I get a fuzzy warm feeling, or I get alert. I like it, so I do it again. That's behaviorism. So that's the kind of what environmental influences, think about reinforcements and punishments and things like that. That's an analysis of behavior in terms of looking at the behavior itself and looking at environment. Then there's humanism. Humanism is a way to look at behavior, saying, again, we kind of look at the whole human, but we're looking at, again, reasons why the behavior occurs in terms of internal beliefs and ideas. But psychoanalytic theory tends to look at unconscious wishes and desires that are sometimes negative. Humanism looks at the good in people, and they would say that people behave the way they do because they want to be the best of themselves. They would say, I'm drinking this cup of coffee because I want to be my most alert and do my best work. So if I drink the cup of coffee, I'm more with it and I can make a better video for this class. Okay? That's what humanism would say. So why do I do it? Because I want to succeed. And my choices are part of what makes me succeed. They look at the good in people. The last point of view in terms of major approaches is cognitive. Looking at behavior from a viewpoint of what am I thinking? What am I thinking as I'm drinking this cup of coffee? What is going through my mind? I am thinking, I need a cup of coffee. I am thinking, I'm tired right now, I need to get perked up. What thoughts are going through my mind? Okay? That's cognitive. So those are the major views on human behavior. There are also major branches of psychology, and some of these kind of correlate with the views on human behavior. The first branch of psychology would be biopsychology and an evolutionary perspective. They would analyze the coffee drinking or any kind of behavior as what are the biological processes? What does caffeine do to the nervous system? How does the caffeine affect you? Are there any genetic predispositions to coffee drinking? How does it affect your motor coordination? How does it affect the chemicals in your brain and in your body? That's what biology-related psychologists would do. They would look at evolution, they would look at genetics, they would look at brain chemistry, things like that. That's what they study. Cognitive psychology looks at thought processes, just like a cognitive view. So cognitive psychology takes a cognitive view. They look at things like memory, processing, sort of, do I understand what coffee is? How do I understand what coffee is? That kind of thing. Cognitive psychologists would look at that. Developmental psychology looks at changes across the lifespan. They may ask the question, at what age do people start drinking coffee? Is there an age that people start drinking coffee? Does caffeine have different responses in kids versus adolescents versus adults? Those are things developmental psychologists might learn. They might look at the fact of what was the process for me learning how to drink coffee? What in my lifespan influenced me in terms of my biology and my environment and my thoughts, but how was the process? Developmental psychologists kind of look at the process across the lifespan. Personality psychologists look at typical modes of behavior. Personality is sort of typical behavior. So personality psychologists might look at who drinks coffee. Is it people that are more extroverted, people that are more introverted? They look at the big five like that. Extroversion and introversion, conscientiousness. They look at different things. They look at what our typical ways of behaving are, essentially. That's what personality psychologists look at. Social psychologists look at how we behave among others. So they might look at, if other people are drinking coffee, am I more likely to drink it? Am I likely to follow the crowd? Even if I don't like it, am I still likely to follow the crowd? They might look at socially, how did coffee drinking occur, and what kind of groups does coffee drinking occur. Social psychologists look at things like conformity, obedience. Are people attracted to people who are coffee drinkers? They might look at that. So that's what social psychologists look at. Industrial organizational psychologists may look at drinking coffee. They may look at the conditions under which you think you need to drink coffee. In other words, the padding in my chair right now, and the angle of the camera, and the coffee itself, and where is it located, and how is it affecting my productivity. That's what industrial organizational psychologists look at. They do a lot of workplace analysis. Health-related psychologists might look at stress levels, and how does caffeine affect stress, and how does caffeine affect your overall health. So they look at things like that. They look at stress and coping and you've heard type A behaviors. That's what health psychologists look at. Clinical psychology is a branch of psychology that looks at abnormal behavior. Well, how might coffee drinking be defined as abnormal? Well, how much do I drink? Do I drink 20 cups of coffee a day? That might be considered abnormal. One of the things we're going to look at, one of the last weeks of class, we're going to look at abnormal behavior and how things are defined as abnormal. But that's what clinical psychologists look at. They look at what behavior is considered abnormal and how to treat that. Forensic psychologists work with the criminal justice system. They look at crimes, and they may look at instances where people have died and analyze that. They testify in court. That's what forensic psychologists do. So that's another branch of psychology. So there's a lot of different ways to look at behavior. You're looking at drinking this cup of coffee, anything from the biology behind it, to socially why I do it, to what am I thinking, to my childhood experiences, to the environmental things behind it. There's a lot of different things to look at. How do we use this? Why are we looking at psychology in the end? Well, there's a bunch of careers in psychology. What do psychologists do? And that's the last thing to talk about. Some careers in psychology, like one of the first you can think of is counseling, helping people who have issues. There are also things like human services jobs. There are also things like working in a court system, school psychologists. There are a lot of different options. So I encourage you to read up on careers in psychology. I encourage you to pick your own behavior and try to look at how the different people would view it.